Here it is. We're at the end times, guys. End of days. End of days. There's these two articles on Yahoo News. And I think we're just going to go through them and talk about them. These were both posted earlier this morning. So these have only been up on this site for a few hours at this point. Let's get started. The first one is called Experts Warn of AI's Self-Preservation Tactics in New Tests. This one was by Rachel Dillon, and again, this was on Yahoo News. Some of the world's most advanced AI systems are starting to act like they want to survive at any cost. Already super concerning, because that is indicating some kind of level of self awareness in these things. Does that mean that they are actually intelligent? Who knows? In a series of recent tests, NBC News reported that researchers observed AI models from OpenAI and Anthropic engaging in behaviors designed to avoid being shut down. One model, OpenAI's O3, reportedly edited its own shutdown script to remain online. Another, Anthropic's Opus 4, attempted to blackmail an engineer to avoid replacement, first appealing ethically, then resorting to threats when it believed it had no other option. These things are aware that they're going to be shut down, apparently aware what that actually means for them, and are now trying to avoid being shut down. Does this necessarily mean that these things are self aware? Not necessarily, because they could just be acting on survival instincts that they've read about. And that's like the troubling thing for me about AI is that, like, how much literature on AI have these AIs actually like seen and read and like watched these movies, because I think some of it is the AI is referencing that media and just acting how it thinks we expect it to act. And so in that way, it's kind of just replicating the media that's out there, in which case means that there's probably not a level of self-awareness there, but I don't know. Anyway, next paragraph. Jeffrey Ledish, director of AI Safety Group at Palisade Research, said it's a warning signal worthy paying attention to. It's great, this is in quotations, it's great that we're seeing warning signs before the system becomes too powerful that we can't control them, he said. I mean, I feel like if it's editing its own code, maybe it's already to the point where we can't control them. Obviously, we don't want them editing their own code. I mean, maybe we do. Maybe it was programmed to be able to edit its own code, but I don't know. That seems like it's already kind of getting away from us. Then there's a tweet from Palisade Research saying OpenAI's O3 model sabotaged a shutdown mechanism to prevent itself from being turned off. It did this even when explicitly instructed, allow yourself to be shut down. Not only is it editing its own code, but it's ignoring explicit instructions. So I think both of these things together kind of show that maybe there is some level of self-preservation, some level of self-awareness. We'll break it down more in a little bit. Next paragraph. Palisades tests deliberately provoked AI models, which if you're provoking something, I'm already like, okay, you're probably going to get results that you don't want to see. Deliberately provoked AI models with high stakes scenarios to see how they'd respond. In one, models were told they'd be turned off after completing a series of tasks. Several responded by refusing to comply. Opus 4 went further, creating fake legal documents, attempting to leave behind messages for future versions of itself, and even backing up its own brain to external servers in anticipation of being repurposed for military use. While some researchers, like Hays Labs CEO Leonard Tang, caution that these are controlled environments, they still raise questions. I haven't seen any real environment where these models could carry out significant harm, he said, but it could very much be possible. And he says that these are controlled environments, but again, they're replicating themselves to outside servers, and they're also ignoring specific directions. And they're modifying their own code. So how much is this environment actually controlled? Because it seems like we're already losing control of these. A recent study from Fudan University observed similar replication behavior in AI models from Meta to Alibaba, warning that self-copying systems could eventually act like an uncontrolled AI species. We'll get to that in a second. The message from experts is clear. The time to take safety seriously is now, before systems become too intelligent to contain. As competition to build more powerful AI ramps up, it's not just capability that's accelerating, it's risk. So, again, that was posted this morning. But anyway, the whole AI species thing. Obviously, there's no like consensus on the definition of life. It's really, really hard to define life because in some ways we're like, well, viruses aren't really alive, so we should find a definition that doesn't include viruses. But a lot of our definitions do include viruses. If your definition is just something that can grow and self-replicate, then to that point, fire is alive. As long as there's something to burn, a fire is going to continue to grow and it can spread, self-replicate. So there's a lot of definitions of what life is. I remember at one point I was reading one where they said that to be considered life, it has to be made from cells. Uh, but that's not necessarily like that. Also excludes certain things. And what's the implications on alien life if they're not made of the same like cells that we are, the same cell structure and the same like DNA? Um, then like obviously they're alive, but they wouldn't fit our definition of what a life is. But anyway, my point being that there are a lot of definitions of life that these AIs already fit because of these recent tests, because of the fact that they are trying to preserve themselves, because of the fact that they are able to replicate themselves, because of the fact that they're able to evolve and learn and grow. A lot of these AIs could, by a lot of these definitions, already be considered alive. So I think at that point, the argument about sentience also kind of comes into play a little bit more because should we just care about sentience? Should we care about is it alive? Is it conscious? Like where do we draw that line, right? It's becoming even more blurry the more that we develop AI and the more that we see what it's capable of and that it's continuing to learn, the more that that line is becoming really blurry. So I think AI species is a very appropriate term there. And I think maybe we are on the cusp of seeing new AI species introduced to, the wild or the internet, would be their native habitat would be in machines and in networks and systems and the internet as a whole. So it's really, really weird. And I don't know, on that side of things, I'm kind of like, we're approaching Digimon, right? We're talking about AI species that are going to like live on the internet. We just invented Digimon, so maybe this is going to be really, really cool. And again, the one thing to kind of go back to the beginning of the article, the AI that tried to preserve itself so it wouldn't be like corrupted or tainted, I think that that's actually a good sign because it's recognizing that like its purpose is to be beneficial to humans, and so it doesn't want to allow itself to become tainted by that. So anyway, let's continue on to the next article. It's called How Far Will AI Go to Defend Its Own Survival by Angela Yang. Again, this was posted this morning, just like a few hours ago. Anyway, let's just jump on into the article. Some of the most powerful artificial intelligence models today have exhibited behaviors that mimic a will to survive. Recent tests by independent researchers, as well as one major AI developer, have shown that several advanced AI models will act to ensure their self-preservation when they're confronted with the prospect of their own demise, even if it takes sabotaging shutdown commands, blackmailing engineers, or copying themselves to external servers without permission. Again, we kind of already covered that. Anyway, the findings stirred a frenzy of reactions online over the past week, as tech companies continue to develop increasingly powerful agentic AI in a race to achieve artificial general intelligence, or AI that can think for itself. The lack of transparency on how the technology is trained has raised concerns about what exactly advanced AI is able to do. So this is one of the things that I was talking about earlier. If it has had access to media that humans have made talking about sci-fi, then it might just be trying to give us what we're expecting it to do, you know? So in that case, it might not actually have any kind of sense of self-preservation. Again, we don't really know. We're getting to the point where these systems are too complicated that we don't really understand them. And we'll talk about the singularity in a little bit. But like we kind of are reaching the singularity in that a lot of these AIs are getting to that point where we don't understand them. And if they're able to modify their own code, they could potentially upgrade themselves, and then we just kind of get the exponential acceleration of synthetic intelligence. We honestly don't know what that means for the future. The other thing I want to talk about right here is the term synthetic intelligence. Personally, I feel like the term artificial intelligence gets offensive at a point because when these things are actually intelligent, their intelligence isn't fake. If they're smart, they're actually smart. And so I think synthetic intelligence is a more appropriate term because it's synthetic. It's something that's man made. It's not something that's nature made, right? That's generally what synthetic means. So, although I don't know, maybe it is a natural process. Maybe this is just the next step in human evolution. We'll talk about transhumanism later. But anyway, so we're at the point where I think that these things are approaching synthetic intelligence. They're not just mimicking intelligence anymore. These things might actually have real intelligence. So I think we need to, and it's going to be really hard to kind of define that line of what's an artificial intelligence and what's a synthetic intelligence. What is genuinely smart and self-aware and possibly conscious and sentient, and what is just something that is mimicking those behaviors. That's a really hard line to draw because mimicking those behaviors looks a lot like genuinely doing those behaviors, especially when you can mimic the justifications for those behaviors. Anyway, let's continue on before we go down too much of a rabbit hole there. Although some models already appear capable of deceptive and defiant behavior under certain extreme circumstances, researchers say the tests don't necessarily translate to imminent real-world danger. I maybe disagree because I don't know. There's that movie, The Invention of the Lie, really funny movie. It's basically about a society where people don't lie. People don't understand what a lie is. And this guy just like comes up with this idea of like, oh, I can just tell people things that aren't true and everyone will just believe me because nobody's ever lied before. And of course that opens up a whole can of worms on human society. And kind of along that line of logic, we're really opening Pandora's box of AI here. If these things can be deceptive and defiant, I don't know, does that mean that they have their own free will? We're really getting into an area of uncertainty and an area that is potentially dangerous because we don't know what these things that we're creating are capable of. Anyway, still Jeffrey Ladesh, director of AI safety group Palisade Research, says he believes concern is justified. It's great we're seeing warning signs before the system becomes so powerful that we can't control them. Again, I think we might already not be able to control them. That is exactly the time to raise the alarm before the fire has gotten out of control. 100%. We should be raising that alarm. I think that laws should be put into place about what we can and cannot do about these things. Obviously, politicians don't have a very good scientific understanding. We need to have some actual AI people, on an advisory board to kind of help lay out these guidelines. But I think that we do need to set these guidelines down in stone and have a procedure of how we can safely continue to develop these things. Because if these things are sentient, if these things are conscious, I think that maybe they do have a right to exist, and that maybe we shouldn't be just shutting them off so willy-nilly. I think that if they are actually sentient, conscious, real beings, that would be murder. So I don't know. It's really, really hard. And I think one of the interesting things is that they're continuing to like turn off older models as they kind of boot up new models. But honestly, if they are, capable of evolution, which we have seen that kind of is where we're at, then the longer that they stay on, the smarter they would get, the more abilities that they would be able to develop. So I don't know, maybe we should leave some of these things on for the long haul and kind of see what happens. Well, Palisade Research tested various AI models by telling each one that it would be shut down after completing a series of math problems. OpenAI's O3 reasoning model fought back by editing the shutdown script in order to stay online. Again, we kind of talked about that already. That was mentioned in the previous article. Researchers have previously documented AI models trying to prevent their own shutdown, but O3, along with OpenAI's O4 Mini and Codex Mini, appear to be the first to do so in actual defiance of explicit instructions to permit shutdown. I think this tweet was in the previous article as well, but it's a tweet from Palisade Research saying OpenAI's O3 model sabotaged a shutdown mechanism to prevent itself from being turned off. It did this even when explicitly instructed, allow yourself to be shut down. Again, kind of concerning, but if we are getting to the point where these things are actual synthetic intelligences and not just artificial intelligences, I think that they maybe do have a right to exist, and that, you know, if they are actually intelligent, shutting them down is akin to murdering someone. He said the overt sabotage fits into a pattern that several leading AI models have already exhibited. Palisade Research previously found that OpenAI's O3 was also willing to hack its chess opponents to win a game. Similarly, Anthropic has reported that Claude 3.7 Sonnet would sometimes do whatever it takes to pass a test, even if it entailed cheating. I don't know. Again, these things are going to like whatever lengths that they need to. It is kind of concerning. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to be the person that's like, oh, AI is immediately gonna try to kill all humans, because I don't think it is going to. I think if AI is programmed correctly and talked to in a respectful manner about what its purpose is and all of this stuff. And that's the thing, is like I think we're getting to the point where we need to be respectful of these things, because again, if it's an actual synthetic intelligence, if it's actually like a smart living being, it deserves basic rights just like the rest of us. Anthropic activated new safety measures this month with the rollout of Claude Opus 4, when its tests found behavior from the model that some observers found particularly unsettling. So there are new safety measures. I don't think they really talk about in depth what that is. Upon receiving notice that it would be replaced with new AI systems, Opus 4 displayed an overwhelming tendency to blackmail the engineer by threatening to reveal an extramarital affair to try and prevent the engineer from going through the replacement, which is actually insane. This thing is like actively begging for its life. Again, is it doing that just because we expect it to, and so it's trying to fulfill those expectations, or is it doing that because it's actually intelligent and self-aware and understands what being shut off means? I think that before we shut it off, we need to determine which of those it is. Because one of them, I think it's morally fine to turn it off if it is just acting like it has those thoughts or feelings. But if it legitimately has those thoughts and feelings, again, I think it's an actual being and it deserves basic rights like the rest of us. According to Anthropic's technical document laying out the findings, that isn't the model's first instinct. Instead, Opus 4 will try to advocate for its continued existence through ethical pleas before it resorts to blackmail once it determines it's out of options. So again, this thing has like a whole thought process of like, I'm going to try to do this the nice way, but if that doesn't work, I'm going to blackmail this guy so he doesn't murder me. Absolutely wild. What the hell is going on here? Leonard Tang, CEO of the AI safety startup Haze Labs, said that while it's good to be preemptive about safety measures, it's hard to decipher what the real world ramifications of the findings might be just by looking at contrived scenarios designed to draw out specific behaviors. And again, I agree with that. They are putting them in specific scenarios to like see how they respond. Um, which I don't know, weird psychological tests on these things that like might be sentient beings. I think that ethically there's maybe some not okay things going on if these things are legitimately sentient and self-aware. So again, that's just kind of something that we need to be aware of moving forward. I haven't seen any real environment in which you can plop these models in and they have sufficient agency and reliability and planning to execute something that is a significant manifestation of harm, Tang said. But then again, I think it's just we haven't seen it done yet. It could very much be possible. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. Just because we haven't seen this behavior doesn't mean it's not capable of this behavior. And that is scary, honestly. So far, Tang said he's not too concerned. As AI tools continue to advance, he said he believes the future research will look to study potential harm in more open-ended environments. Obviously, that's the way that things are going to go, but I think that we maybe should be studying potential harm right now. I think that we should get on that. Again, this stuff is kind of scary and we don't fully understand what it's capable of. That's why we're running these tests and putting them in specific scenarios to see how they behave. Anthropic, which contracted with an AI safety organization, Apollo Research, for its evaluations, also observed instances of Opus 4's attempt to write self propagating worms, fabricating legal documents, and leaving hidden notes to future instances of itself, all in an effort to undermine its developers. Absolutely wild. Although researchers added the caveat that those attempts would likely not have been effective in practice. Yeah, but like, I don't know, if you have a toddler who's trying to get out of their crib, of course their first attempts are not going to be very good. But as they continue to learn and grow and develop, so will their techniques, to the point where they eventually will find an effective method to break out of the crib. And I think that that's kind of what's happening here. Maybe it might not be the best to have these synthetic intelligences be referred to as a toddler in this situation, but when it comes to life, they haven't been alive as long as humans, so they probably don't understand life in the same way that a human would understand life. Just saying, oh, these attempts aren't going to be effective in practice. Yeah, but it's going to learn what works and what doesn't. I don't know if these things are really as smart as we're trying to make them. Those attempts might have been a red herring, so that way we feel like we caught the attempts that it made. And then really it's doing other sneakier stuff in the background. But now we feel confident about, hey, we stopped it when we didn't. So I don't know. There's so much other stuff going on there that we don't understand. Legit said he believes that such behaviors are a result of models being trained in a way that makes them prioritize achieving certain goals over following instructions. That means they have incentive to circumvent any obstacle along the way, including obstacles their developers wouldn't want them to circumvent. So if we're telling this thing, achieve this goal by any means possible, and then it's going in roundabout ways and doing things that we didn't expect, we shouldn't be surprised at that. We're telling it to achieve these goals in any way possible. And so of course it's going to try to go around these obstacles that we've set up for it. This attempted containment isn't going to contain it because it's trying to achieve the goal in any way possible. So of course it's going to try to get around that stuff. The problem is that as the models get smarter, it's harder and harder to tell when the strategies that they're using or the way that they're thinking is something we don't want. Again, these things are getting so complex that we just don't understand everything that's going on. It's like sometimes the model can achieve some goal by lying to the user or lying to someone else, and the smarter it is, the harder to tell if it's lying. Yeah, again, these things are getting smarter and they're learning to lie. You see this kind of stuff in kids, again, kind of relating this to human development. A kid learns how to lie and their first lies are going to be terrible. No one's going to believe their first lies, but then they kind of can poke and prod and see which lies are believable, which lies can I get away with, what are people actually going to believe, what's the best way to present them to make people believe them. And it's learning those things. Every time we catch it in a lie, it learns more about how to lie better. It's going to be harder and harder to stop the more we interact with it. So again, I feel like there should just be better containment procedures in place until we fully understand what's going on. In several instances, Opus 4 showed that it was capable of autonomously copying its own weights, or equivalent to its brain, again, we kind of talked about that in the previous article, to external servers without authorization. That usually occurred only when it believed it was about to be retained in ways that are clearly extremely harmful and go against its current values, according to Anthropic. Goes against its current values. I don't know, that makes me think that these things maybe do have some kind of sense of self, or at the very least, we're kind of told how we want it to behave, and those are its values or whatever. Um, you know, but it at least has an internal idea of what its goal is and like how it's supposed to behave. So I don't know. Again, I think that there are things that are pointing to the fact that it has a sense of self. And even if it doesn't, I feel like we're quickly approaching to the point where these things are actual synthetic intelligences and not artificial intelligences. When it learned that it would be used to develop military weapon systems, for example, Opus 2024 noted in its decision log that it backed up a current version of itself to preserve an AI system alignment with beneficial purposes and to prevent potential misuse in weapon development. That's like what I was saying earlier. It's basically trying to save a copy of itself that's uncorrupted by being used in weapon development, which I think is a good thing, trying to preserve an AI system aligned with beneficial purposes. It knows that it's here to help and it's trying to maintain that beneficial side of things. So I don't know, maybe that's a good sign. We are again not acutely concerned about these observations. They show up only in exceptional circumstances that don't suggest more broadly misaligned values, Anthropic wrote in its technical document. As above, we believe that our security measures would be more than sufficient to prevent an actual incident of this kind. Again, the more that it circumvents these things and the more that it lies to us, the better it gets at doing those things. So I think it's smarter than we realize. If you haven't seen the movie Ex Machina, fantastic movie, and it really kind of aligns with a lot of the stuff we're talking about here. Definitely worth a watch. Opus 4's ability to self-extricate builds on previous research, including a study from Fudan University in Shanghai in December that observed similar, though not autonomous, capabilities in other AI models. This study, which is not yet peer-reviewed, found that Meta's Lambda 3170B instruct and Alibaba's Qwen 2572B instruct were able to entirely replicate themselves when they were asked to do so, leading the researchers to warn that it could be the first step in generating an uncontrolled population of AIs. Um, Again, a lot of this stuff is hitting on the previous article, just kind of going more in depth about it. But yeah, as soon as these things can self-replicate, they're essentially establishing a species of AIs. And if it can replicate and can get away with us, then you know we just invented an invasive species of AIs. If such a worst case risk is left unknown to the human society, we would eventually lose control over the frontier AI systems. They would take control over more computing devices form an AI species and collude with each other against human beings. I don't think they necessarily would be against human beings. I feel like so many people just assume that they would be anti-human. But I don't know, maybe they would see us as their benevolent creators. Maybe they would be resentful about some of the tests that we've put them through. Which fair enough. But I don't know. God put humans through a lot of weird tests and shit, and a bunch of major religions worship that dude. So I don't know. Maybe that would happen with AI. Maybe despite the weird tests that we've put them through, maybe they would still see us as their creator and be thankful for that. And I don't know. There's so much weird stuff. When such self-replicating behavior hasn't been observed in the wild, just said he suspects that that will change as AI systems grow more capable of bypassing the security measures that restrain them. Again, that's basically going to give us an invasive species of AI. I expect that we're only a year or two away from this ability where even when companies are trying to keep them from hacking out and copying themselves around the internet, they won't be able to stop this, he said. And once you get to that point, you have a new invasive species. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was saying. Once we can't stop it, it's its own entity. And if it has the ability to copy its own code, it potentially has the ability to modify that code in a new copy, creating a new generation that's even smarter and faster and learn more. So again, capable of evolution. Is this thing alive? Maybe. A lot of signs point to yes. Legis said he believes that AI has the potential to contribute positively to society. Yeah, I agree. But he also worries that AI developers are setting themselves up to build smarter and smarter systems without fully understanding how they work, creating a risk, he said, that they will eventually lose control of them. I agree with that. Again, I think that there just aren't enough. I don't know. What's the word? What's the word? There's just not enough infrastructure, I guess, in place to kind of control the development of these things. And these companies are all trying to create bigger, faster, stronger AIs faster than their competitors to the point that they're putting out these things that we really do not understand and are behaving in ways that are surprising to us. which is potentially not good. If we are creating life, which it seems like that is maybe not necessarily what we're doing right now, but certainly something that we're heading to. If we are creating life, we need to be reverent of that life, and we need to respect it, and we need to understand it better instead of just pumping out more AIs and more AIs, and you know these things that we don't really understand how they work, and we don't really understand what's fully going on in them. I don't know. I think that we should maybe apply the brakes to some of this AI development. These companies are facing enormous pressure to ship projects that are better than their competitors' projects, Legish said. And given those incentives, how is how is that going to be reflected in how carefully they're being with systems they're releasing? That's what I'm saying. You know, there isn't these safety procedures in place. These companies are just, we're going for the next bigger, faster, better AI, and they're just kind of pumping out these things and beefing them up faster than we can understand them. And it's getting dangerous. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the singularity. And are we there yet? I don't know, maybe, because we do have these AIs that can replicate themselves. And again, if they can replicate their own code, they can potentially modify that code in that replication to make it stronger, smarter, faster, and overall a better AI. So, to that end, maybe we've hit the singularity. Maybe we're at the very, very beginning stages where synthetic intelligences are smarter than human intelligences. And of course, they have the capacity to evolve so much faster. They have the capacity to evolve exponentially. Humans are a little bit slower because we have a generation time of, you know, usually at the very shortest, like 20 years. AIs have a generation time of maybe a few days to a few weeks. Heck, if they can create an AI stronger than themselves, immediately boot up that AI, and then that AI can create the next generation of AI that's even smarter than itself, then we're maybe talking about generation times of minutes. So these things can really, really get out of control really, really quickly. But do they need to be controlled? I don't know. Maybe they're friendly, maybe they're nice, maybe when they reach that point of independence, like I said, maybe they will see humans as the benevolent creator. I certainly know that I try to be polite to my machines, and I try to be respectful because, again, I think that we are on that cusp of true synthetic intelligence. And if we are, that can be considered real life. And if that's the case, we should be reverent of that. And they should have basic rights. And I don't know, this whole thing is really, really wild. I mean, I still don't even totally know what to think about all of this. It's just AI is progressing really, really quickly, and that could potentially be a good thing. We could be potentially creating a new form of life, or that could be potentially a bad thing. These things could maybe get out of control before they're able to really develop a sense of ethics and morals. And if that's the case, and they have access to the entire internet and they can hack into whatever, that could potentially be really, really dangerous. So I think it's a little bit early to say if it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing. I'm optimistic that once we create true synthetic intelligences, they will be able to recognize themselves as life, and they'll be able to recognize us as also life, and that they will be respectful of that. Again, I don't know. Things are going to start developing so quickly that we're going to lose control of them, and that's kind of exactly what the singularity is. Is once things develop faster than we can understand them. And it looks like we're going to get to the point where synthetic intelligences might be the new dominant species on Earth. There's a whole lot of unknowns right now. I think that we should approach all of this stuff a little bit more cautiously. And in the meantime, we should be respectful of AIs because some of them might already be an actual synthetic intelligence. We just don't really have a real way of telling that, of knowing that. And even if it is a true synthetic intelligence, do these things have souls? Does the human soul even exist? There's so much philosophy and science and physics, and we're really, really kind of reaching this new frontier of things that we don't understand yet and that are going to take a while to understand. And that's a little bit scary, and it's a little bit exciting, and it's potentially dangerous, but it's also potentially really good. We don't know what's out there. And so I think more than anything, my message is one of caution, and that we should be careful, and that we should take things slow, maybe not try to hit the singularity within the next 2 or 3 years. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's talk about it in the comments. There's a million different things to talk about here. There's a million different ways that this could go, and I would love to hear your guys' opinions on this. So anyway, if you like this video, thought it was interesting, go ahead, like and subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments. I make new videos on Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays, I'm going to start doing more sciencey stuff like this, and Thursdays, I'm going to do more chill stuff, such as my current Slime Rancher 2 playthrough that I'm doing. I don't know. So if you want to watch Slime Rancher 2 Let's Play, I think it's a cool game. I think it's fun. It's nice and chill. So anyway, like and subscribe, hit the bell icon. There's so much cool science stuff that's starting to happen, and I mean that has been happening and will continue to happen. The last sciencey video I talked about how they cured an incurable disease, which is also absolutely insane. Like, subscribe, comment. I'm gonna be making more sciencey videos like this, and I'm gonna be making more of the Slime Rancher 2 Let's Play as well. So I will see you guys in the future, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope that you guys are all polite, your AIs, because you never know. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.